are listening to Gear Guys Radio.
That's right. You're listening to Gear Guys Radio, and we are live on the air with Brett Butler from REV33. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah, man. So, folks, if you don't know who REV33 is, they're a newer company with some great technology. And tonight is not about changing the tonality of your instrument. It's about protecting one of your most valuable assets, and that is your hearing as a musician. There's a lot of people out there that make products that have claims, that make products that diffuse certain things, but they don't normally work, or they take away from the dynamics of the music as a way that you hear it to be able to mix it properly, or when you're hearing just in general. So this product, Rosario has the product. He's been using it. He's using it right now. And it works in conjunction with a pair of headphones. And it pretty much protects your ears from the undesirable frequencies that can result in permanent damage. And I think that's pretty freaking cool. So before I go any further, I want to turn it over to the man that invented it. And Brett, why don't you tell us all about it?
All right. Well, thank you, Jack. Thanks, Rosario. I really appreciate you guys having me on. This has been a really exciting journey for us. Our background is really in semiconductors, and the reason that I think this is important is because it talks to how we figured out what we figured out with the REV33. Dennis Roschmeyer is our CTO, and he and I worked in the early days of data communications with DSL and cable modems, where you have end-to-end communications, where signal impairment is very important, isolating the noise that's causing the impairment and detecting it and canceling it out or removing it, so that you can effectively get good data communication from point to point. And we looked at kind of audio in the same way. It's very analogous, and you know what we see is that we have an intersection of a couple of things here. One, we have professional musicians that are almost 4 times as likely to develop noise-induced hearing loss as the general public, and we have headphones and in-ear monitors that professional musicians use that really aren't spec'd for audio quality. Once in a while, you might see a THD, total harmonic distortion spec, but that total harmonic distortion spec doesn't always provide good information under real-world dynamic conditions where music and vocals are being rendered by the system instead of sine waves or test signals when you're designing your product. So we wanted to take a look at that in a different way. And back in 2013, we started our initial research, formed our company in 2014, and started conducting trials in late 2014 with sound engineers in touring bands, because we felt like that would be our toughest audience. And if what we thought we were doing, which was removing noise that was being generated during playout, was actually important and impactful to the ears of professional musicians, we thought, well, that would be the best place to test it. And we started testing it in 2014 and launched our product in 2015, and it's seen consistent results ever since. It's been a really wonderful experience. We've had professional musicians over and over tell us that there's more clarity, there is less fatigue, less ringing perhaps at the end of the show, a long studio session, a long mixing session. Their ears aren't as tired, and they can trust their ears for a lot longer. And we think that that's directly correlated to taking noise out of the system that was being generated during the play out of the music that they were listening to in the first place.
That's awesome. So for folks listening right now, how would you describe the actual unit that you'd be using? From a standpoint as a consumer, what am I buying?
So the REV33 is a small device. It's a little electronic device that is passive. It does not have a battery. And it simply connects in between the headphones that you're using or the in-ear monitors, or if you're just casually listening with earbuds, connecting between the earbuds and the source, whether the source is a receiver pack on your belt, a mixing console, mixing board with a headphone output, or your iPhone. And so we provide this little device that is, it's very lightweight, very small, I would say about an inch on a side by a half inch thick, and it simply connects in between the two. It does not have a battery, so it doesn't consume battery life. It doesn't color the music. Most of the work that the REV33 does is looking from your ear back towards the music source. So our objective is to not touch the music signal going from the source to your ear, if you can wrap your head around that one. And so by doing that, you simply hear a better music signal, a more pure music signal, the way that it was intended to be heard.
So if you were to do an A/B test between, say, if I plugged this into a cell phone and I was using a cell phone just to listen to music, would I actually hear a difference in the music if I A/B'd it?
So what we hear is about, and this is our best estimate, about everyone's ear is so different that about 20% of our current customers that we've polled do not hear a difference but feel a difference. About 80% of our customers actually hear a difference, and sometimes it's subtle. And so we provide a guide that tells you a little bit of what professionals have fed back to us and what they tell us we should listen for. And we have also taken it a step further and done a correlation between the types of noise that are generated, and there are several types that are generated during the play out, and the impact that noise has on different aspects of things like timbre, separation, stereo field, and just overall clarity at different frequency ranges.
That's awesome. Rosario, what questions do you have?
Well, I've been using the product pretty consistently over the last, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks now, and I've done a couple of sessions with them. And I got to tell you, it is a noticeable difference. I mean, I'm wearing them now, and I'm obviously very comfortable with them. And now that I've been using it, I can definitely say I would never do another studio session without them, because it really does eliminate the fatigue. Because while we're not mixing with headphones, but we're using them for critical listening. And sometimes, over a 4-hour session, that can be very tiresome to your ears, especially that close to your head. And what I find that it really absolutely eliminates that fatigue. And that was one of the things that was, definitely noticeable. And certainly the added clarity, which I can't, it's kind of amazing. It's like, there was a piece of paper in between me and my headphones, and now the REV33 has removed that, and I get that extra pop of clarity so that my stereo field is, I can pick stuff out dimensionally, which, wasn't as noticeable before as it is now. And, so as in a mixed environment, especially when you're, setting up a field of drums, the clarity is just unbelievable.
So the input that you had, the feedback that you had on this, Rosario, was 100% consistent with the past 2 years. The first guys that used this were gentlemen that were doing sound in the industry for 20, 30 years, and were working on touring groups like Creedence Clearwater Revisited, Big Head Todd and the Monsters, and folks like that. And so they have a very critical ear, but they also know when they have a problem that they haven't been able to solve just by moving knobs. And what we tried to tell them was that you lose control of the mix once it hits the receiver pack or the mixing board that you're plugged into. So you can provide the absolute best mix to that point, but you lose control in what we call the last mile, or the last couple of feet, from the amplifier to the passive drivers in your ears. And that's what we found that no one had really spent time looking at. And there's a couple of things that I think are important there. One is what we call microphonics, and the other is we're still developing a term for it, but I'll talk about both of those if you guys are interested in hearing a little bit about those.
Absolutely.
One is so microphonics is one, and typically you think of microphonics as rubbing a cable and hearing in your ear, but if you put earbuds in your ear and whistle and measure the current coming out of the jack, it's a sonically significant amount of current. And what I mean by that is that if you look at that on a spectrum analyzer and you replace that amplitude of current with a tone, say I'm going to drive a 1 kilohertz tone back into my ear, you will hear that tone. And so what that means is that you're getting energy from around the stage that you're on, or in a studio, if you have ambient noise, transients around you, that will burst into the transducer in your ear, generate energy that drives back in, and in a destructive way mixes with the music, and shows back up in your ear as noise. There are a few other things like that we work on, that we've identified, and that we work on with the REV33. And the REV33 is really just one way to solve it. There's multiple ways. The real important thing is the identification, isolation of it, and understanding what it does to you. And again, the key is to not touch the music. Music has been processed enough. We don't want to compress. We don't want to limit. We don't want to process the signal going from the source to your ear. We just want to make sure that no energy that has nothing to do with the music gets back into that original music signal and corrupts it. And that's what we found has been happening. I could give you a couple of examples that I think are really interesting, if you don't mind.
Please do.
We, as we did our initial trials, we started working with higher level bands. The first one that we worked with at kind of the top tier was Kenny Chesney's band, and the keyboardist is a gentleman named Wyatt Beard. Really nice guy, and was having problems after show on their tour last year in 2015. What I was told was that about 3/4 of the way through the show, his mix would turn muddy, and he would have a headache after a show. And it took about a month to gain the confidence and trust of the really excellent monitor engineers that they've got there, and the techs, and we spent a lot of time with them. And I got a picture, a text on one Thursday night regarding the first show that was being done with the REV33, and I didn't hear anything for about a week, and I finally got a text back, and I was on pins and needles, of course, and the text simply said, "The mud is gone, headaches are gone."
Wow,
that's pretty impressive.
Yep, that is
and at that
that does it.
At that level, there's no motivation on a product that retails for $149 that can be bought only online at the time from a company that was not in the audio business. There's no motivation to do anything but search for a solution to a problem and call it when it works. And soon after that, we had another situation with Cindy Blackman Santana, Mr. Carlos Santana's lovely wife, who was playing drums on Lenny Kravitz's tour. And we saw her in Houston, and she was kind of chuckling that I'm about to go on stage. I'm not going to use this. Well, she ended up trying it, and she came off stage and she said, "Okay, guys, tonight I heard my kick for the first time on this tour."
That's something right there.
And that's the clarity that you were talking about, Rosario.
Yep.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That clarity changed the way that I approach my mix, because I was hearing things that I didn't hear before, which means I didn't have to do, I backed off on a lot of the processing, and I thought that for me made for better clarity, because, the less I have to treat it, the more I can just kind of keep things nice and tight without over processing the crap out of it.
Well, you're a step ahead of a lot of folks, because what we learned is that a lot of the upstream processing, the artifacts created by that would be exposed as a result of having more clarity. And so you can go make those changes. So that was great. But back to Cindy for just a minute. She said, first I thought, well, it's what you wanted to hear. She said, so I waited until things got really crazy, and they get really crazy in the Lenny Kravitz show. And she said, no, it was still there, clear as a bell. She said, but that's not the cool thing. Here's the cool thing. The cool thing is I can hear you right now. A couple of nights ago, our last show, my family was out, and I just found myself saying, huh? What? And I'm not doing that tonight. The massive ringing that generally happens after a show is calm. She's been playing long enough that she has a low level of tinnitus, but it was calm. It didn't go crazy, and her hearing wasn't compressed.
Nice.
So does this have a volume control on it, or is it just taking the signal and it's eliminating those harmful frequencies?
It doesn't have a volume control, and what we hear is that the very first guy that used it on stage, I think it was August of 2014, came off stage playing the trombone and said, I did not turn my pack up tonight. I always turn my pack up through the night. I didn't touch it. Huh. Jimmy Pankow, the original trombonist with Chicago, I was fortunate enough to visit with him a few weeks ago in San Antonio, and he and his monitor engineer told me that they have taken his volume down by 7 dB through the night.
That's amazing.
That really is something.
Instead of pushing it up, you get to take it down.
Yeah, that really is something. So it doesn't alter. So as a vocalist, it doesn't change anything. Like I could put this in, my in-ears and be just fine. Vocals, it's not going to change any of that. All it's going to do is eliminate some of the bad stuff.
That's correct.
Yep.
That is really something, man.
And if anything, it'll make you a little bit more hypersensitive. So you really pay attention.
Well, I could barely hear out of my left ear, and that's just from years of gigging. I got my right ear, which I normally plaster. I have them set up like 3 monitors to my right, and then I wear an
I could not imagine wearing headphones without these.
God,
So since you brought up the vocalist, could I tell you one more story that might be relevant to you?
Absolutely.
Stories, man. Let's hear them.
So John Tristow is the lead singer for Creedence Clearwater Revisited. So he's there with Cosmo and with Stu Cook and all the guys, and he's just got an awesome voice. And I was so fortunate to be able to attend their sound check here in Austin about a year ago, and he walked up to me after sound check and he said, "I want you to know that this thing saved my voice." Well, I thought he was being flipped because he's a funny guy, and kind of you can tell he likes to jab at you a little bit and have some fun. And he said, "No, I'm completely serious. Let me tell you the story." He said, "I've been doing this for a lot of years. I'm a little bit hard of hearing, got some damage at certain frequencies, and I was having trouble picking my voice out of my mix. And so what I found was that my vocals were getting strained as I oversang. And so I went to the doc. We had to cancel some shows. I went to the doc, and And he said, your vocal cords are purple and the size of my thumb, and they should be bleached white and the size of a garlic clove.
Yeah.
He said, well, Doc, what do I do? He goes, you got to quit screaming. He goes, well, I can't hear myself. He said, Dave, our monitor engineer, brought this to us. I plugged it in, and immediately I could pick my voice out of my mix. And so if you think about it, what it's doing effectively is lowering the noise floor. So you have effectively a better signal to noise ratio. That's really the simplest way to think about it.
That's really awesome. And this works with every in-ear system. There's nothing that it won't work with.
There's nothing it won't work with, but here's the twist. Because it's a passive device, and because every driver is different, we characterize the drivers in your in-ears, your unique in-ears or your headphones, and then we take those electrical parameters that we extract and we simulate those much like we would simulate a DSL chipset and system, and that tells us which REV33 model electrically matches the drivers in your in-ears. So we have on our website, we have probably something like 300 or so characterized and supported, and so it's important that you use the correct REV33 model with the correct headphone brand and model or in-ear brand and model. If you don't, then because it's a passive device, then you might not like it may color the music if it doesn't match exactly. It may color the music and provide less distortion rejection or noise rejection in the return path.
So if I buy one of these, yeah, and I use it like on the show, like tonight, like Rosario's using his, if I use mine on the show, it may not be compatible with my in-ears for stage. I would have to get a second device for that.
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. That's pretty cool.
So it's not a magic device that works in any scenario. We have charts that we share with in-ear companies and headphone companies that show the actual measurements of noise reduction, and we actually just got a paper. If I could do a shameless plug, we got a paper accepted at AES for their fall convention in LA, and we're really happy about that. That's kind of the mecca of serious audio engineering conversation, and so all of this will with much more data. And the data will be on sort of noise reduction, but also on ear fatigue. And there's a way to measure ear fatigue as well, and we've done that.
This is very important science that we're talking about, because there's nothing more important as far as being a musician as your ears.
It's pretty important.
It's darn important.
There's never been a deaf musician. There's been blind, but never deaf.
Exactly. Yeah. So saving that precious resource as long as you can is a good thing. And, definitely. And congratulations on that paper. That's amazing.
That is huge. So, gentlemen, we are just about running up against the clock. We have a few more minutes. If you could tell us, how people can go about purchasing these, how they go about knowing, what is best. Also, I have one more question. I don't know if you'll say this, but what in-ear company works best with your device?
Well, this is going to sound a little bit like a cop-out, but they all do.
Okay.
The short answer is, there's a couple of sources for drivers in ears in the industry, and and certain companies will customize the drivers or work with those two companies to customize them, the crossover networks, and how they all fit together. But we work equally well with all of them, because they all design based upon the frequency response that they desire. And there's really not anyone that's really looking at what happens to the electrical signal as the music plays out.
That's where you come in.
There you go.
That's where we come in.
So where do people go to buy this?
I'm sorry?
Where can people go right now to purchase this?
So REV33.com, REV, and there's a little backstory there. Rev is for reveal. It reveals content that you perhaps haven't heard before. And the 33 is a throwback to vinyl. It was one of the first gentlemen that started listening to this with us when we were working with external speakers made the comment that, this is a warmer, richer sound. It's almost like I'm listening to vinyl. I don't like that. And so REV33.com, and that's a little bit of the backstory behind the name.
Good deal. So
interesting.
Folks, you heard about it here. Go check it out. This is something that everybody can use regardless what you do, or if you just like to enjoy music, if you don't even play music, if you just enjoy it. If you have ears, you can use this product.
If you're a musician, you need this. This is a must-have.
Yeah, if musicians, I would absolutely say so. But anybody, I mean, this would be great for kids with their headphones.
Yeah.
I mean,
got to order.
Well, that's absolutely true, and that's where we want to head, guys. I have teenagers; they have earbuds hanging out of their ears,
24/7.
And with the compressed music today, and the quality of those. There's a lot of noise going in that shouldn't be there. So that's ultimately where we want to go.